Welcome to the study. This is Professor Hemlock here. Today I want to go over the Necrolord Covenant. So I have recently, about 2 weeks ago now, swapped to Necrolord to do some playtesting. I guess it's been about a week and a half-ish. Anyways, I wanted to test on live how Necrolord actually feels when doing content. For those who haven't looked into Necrolord that much, you gain the ability of Deathborn, which is on a 3-minute cooldown. You gain 10% spell power, and then it lasts for 20 seconds, and it makes it so your Arcane Blast will cleave onto 2 additional targets, making it a hyper-effective 3-target cleave. In the upcoming patch, 9.0.5, Necrolord is receiving a buff. Deathborn will gain 5% more spell power and 5-second long duration increase. This makes it 25 seconds long and a 15% spell power increase. That has it simming to be insanely powerful in 3-target cleave and 5-target AoE situations. If you haven't taken a look at the sims that Markonicus did, I will put a link down in the description. Take a peek at them if you haven't yet. They're really informative. They are done on a patchwork fight, so there is no movement, so that is something to take with a grain of salt. Arcane suffers the most from movement fights compared to every other spec, so we do want to be aware that it is a patchwork fight, and those sims may not come to exact reality. Anyways, moving on to the feel of Necrolord. So, Necrolord has one soulbind, pretty much. Bonesmith here is not bad, but in reality, Amani is so much stronger than the other soulbinds. You will pretty much always want to have Amani selected. Amani comes with one major ability here, that is Lead by Example. This absolutely carries Necrolord. It hard carries. It is the strongest ability by a large margin. Essentially, what Lead by Example does, when you cast Deathborn for the entirety of the duration of Deathborn, you gain a 5% intellect bonus and then an additional 2% intellect bonus per party member. That means you are going to have, assuming you're in a Mythic Plus or you're in a raid, you're going to have 13% additional intellect. 13%. That is a massive amount, and that is for the full duration of Deathborn. Deathborn has an amazing conduit, Gift of the Lich, which makes it last even longer. 8.4 seconds if you have the 200 eye level conduit. So a 13% intellect bonus for a extremely long time. That is really something that is amazing. That is just insanely huge. You combo the Lead by Example with the Orc Racial, and you combo that with the Sinful Gladiators badge, where you get an additional 122 int, and if you have the 220 eye level trinket, you get a 193 intellect bonus, and then you have a flask, and then you have the Lead by Example. Boom. It is so much int. I have a baseline int here of about 1540. With intellect, with all those buffs rolling in, you can get upwards of 2.2k intellect. It is nuts. It's nuts. And it really shows in the DPS. So, essentially, when you have all those bonuses, you have the buff up, you Deathborn, you touch the Magi, AP, on 3-target cleave or small AoE packs, or even single-target boss fights, you do an absurd amount of damage. It is unreal how much damage you can do. In 3-target cleave situations, you'll be seeing north of 25k DPS. In single-target boss fights, single target, you'll be seeing north of 18, 19k DPS. On the Inspires, on the first boss where there's 2 targets, I've seen over 22,000. It is mind-blowing how much damage you can do, and it feels really strong. But as strong as that feels, it is on a 3-minute cooldown, and it feels really bad when you mistime that 3-minute cooldown. And it's so situational. Like, I've tried to master using Deathborn in a perfect timed ratio before each boss, but the difficulty with that is if you have a group that has a lot of strong AoE damage, then you're going to get to the boss faster than you normally would. If you have a group that has really weak AoE damage, you're going to get to the bosses slower than you normally would. So it's really, really hard to get Deathborn to be perfectly timed in every situation in Mythic Plus content. I mean, it feels like half the time I will misuse Deathborn and I will be punished for it later when I really want to have Deathborn available, and I'll be unable to maximize my damage output in a situation where I should have had it available if I had known better to properly plan around. So it feels really punishing, where with Night Fae, there's hardly any punishment at all for making a mistake with your cooldowns. Since shifting powers on a 1-minute cooldown, that makes Arcane Power on a lower cooldown, your Touch of the Magi is on a lower cooldown. You just have such ability to make mistakes and not have them be punishing. Night Fae does not feel bad when you make a mistake, but you're also not rewarded with such insanely high DPS numbers when you do time everything perfectly, even though Night Fae is going to maintain a really strong overall DPS figure. After the buff in Mythic Plus content, I'm pretty sure they're going to feel like on Fortified weeks, Night Fae is probably going to feel more powerful. On Tyrannical week, Necrolord is probably going to feel more powerful. Of course, this is an early prediction. Please, please, please take this with a grain of salt. Early predictions are always that. Early predictions, they could entirely be wrong. But I do think on Tyrannical week, Necrolord is probably going to be stronger, and on Fortified, Night Fae is still probably going to remain the best selection. We'll see how that pans out, though. We'll see if I'm right. Anyways, one of the things I do love about Necrolord, even though you only have one Soulbind, the difference is this little swap right here. So on the very bottom of Amani's tree, you have a second potency slot, and you have a little benefit here for running double endurance. You get Gnashing Chompers, which gives you a 3% haste buff, stacking up to a maximum of 15% for 10 seconds per enemy you kill. So in Mythic Plus, this is the best option to run. It doesn't maintain too perfect of an uptime. It averages around 20 to 25% uptime in every dungeon, but a static buff like this is extremely powerful over the course of the entirety of a dungeon, even though it doesn't feel as good on boss fights. The second potency conduit, if I were to run for Mythic Plus, I probably would have ran Magi's Brand. But because you can kind of use this for Mythic Plus, this allows you to use Prodigy for raid situations. So in the raid, since Deathborn's on a 3-minute cooldown and Arcane Power's on a 2-minute cooldown, you need to make up that difference by cooldown reduction through Arcane Prodigy, and you can absolutely achieve that. Since that is so achievable with Clearcast procs, it makes it so you can Deathborn AP on open, Arcane Power in the middle, and then have another Deathborn Arcane Power up in most fights in raid that are of normal length. And that feels really strong. I do like that feeling in raid, even though you do want to time it around your Bloodlust / Time Warps. It is absolutely doable, and that still feels really good. So since you have this pretty straightforward option of I run this in raid, I run this in Mythic Plus, that makes Necrolord feel really nice. So I do like that about Necrolord. Now, in a kind of to summarize everything on Necrolord, I would say it's really fun. It's nice to have such strong, powerful single target damage, especially on Tyrannical week when you go into a fight with Lust, you go into a fight with Pride, and then boom, you smash your Deathborn for 35 seconds, 45 seconds. You are just a monster. You are just smashing Arcane Blast, and it is doing a ton of damage. So it feels really fun, and that's a cool aspect of the gameplay. However, you do lose out on larger AoE pulls, and the rotation outside of Deathborn feels weak. You will feel really weak. And that's because you're just relying on, Touch of the Magi and Rune. I do think a Touch of the Magi Rune overpowered build. Overpowered in Rune with Resonance is going to be the best option for Mythic Plus. Going back to essentially the old build prior to the Crane tree, mainly because without Wild Hunt Tactics and First Strike, it's just simply better to have Rune and overpowered. Overall, if you are someone who is looking to min-max, it's going to be a hard selection, and I think you'll have to wait until the meta pans out. I'm unsure if Necrolord is going to be the BIS for Mythic Plus. I think Venthyr is going to be the single target meta, so if you're someone who does Mythic Plus or a mix of both forms of content, Necrolord probably is going to end up being the best option for I do Raid, I do Mythic Plus. Kind of cool, where you can have one Covenant that's decent at both. Night Fae is probably going to pull ahead of Necrolord in large AoE fights. On fortified weeks, Necrolord's probably going to perform a little bit less than Night Fae. And on tyrannical weeks, I think Necrolord's probably going to perform a little bit better. Anyways, thank everyone for watching. If you have any questions about my experience while I was running Necrolord, or just comments, shoot them down below. I'd be happy to answer. And everyone, have a great day, and I'm excited for this patch to come out. Arcane's gonna be stronger! Have a great day, everyone.